Here. Welcome to this Filmfest DC conversation with Rintu Thomas and Sushmit Ghosh. They're the directors, producers, editors, and a cinematographer of the award-winning Writing with Fire, which is in our Justice Matters section. I'm Linda Blackaby, senior programmer, and as curator of the Justice Matters, I want to thank the Cross Currents Foundation for their support. I'm in San Francisco and acknowledge this location on the unceded territories of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who, along with hundreds of other native tribes, have resided in California thousands of years. Many Ohlone continue to call the Bay Area home and contribute to the whole mix of cultures here. I'm really pleased to have with us Rintu and Sushmit. They're award-winning director-producers from India, whose work in producing films that have the power to create transformative social impact. In 2009, they founded Black Ticket Films, a production company invested in the power of nonfiction storytelling. Their slate of films continue all around the world to be used as advocacy, impact, and education tools. They were recognized for their filmmaking work with a President's Medal in 2012, which is the highest honor given to filmmakers in India. 5 years in the making, Writing with Fire is their first documentary film. So thank you for bringing this really wonderful film about absolutely remarkable women journalists in India, reporting things as they see it with their cell phones to our festival. Our interviewer today, doing the Q&A, is Manjula Kumar. Manjula has been a programming advisor with Filmfest DC since its inception and involved in the selection of films, inviting of filmmakers, and she conducts interviews and currently also serves and has for a long time on our Circle Award jury. She was instrumental in the production of a special focus on Indian cinema from Beijing to Bollywood at the festival from 85 to 2015. She was a project manager, project director, and program director in the Department of Education at the Smithsonian Institution, where she produced several programs and many programs probably, and one on Indian cinema. So I turned it over now to Manjula to do the interview.
Thank you, Linda. So lovely to see you across the nation. And we're all set for another very exciting film festival. And what great offerings once again. So I'm really excited, but even though we're not able to meet in person, but something better than nothing. So I'm missing you around and look forward to seeing the films that we're offering. I'd like to welcome Rintu Thomas and Sushmit Ghosh right across, now sitting in Himachal Pradesh, nice and cool, away from Delhi, which is home for them. I am so excited, so impressed with this new film that you have come up with, starting from the very title, Writing with Fire. I had to kind of say yes, and then unfold. So we'll start our conversation and I'll ask you, and there's so many layers of explanation. You know, the DC Film Festival, I must say congratulations, and Linda's brought the film for us, is a very serious festival. We have a very discerning audience, and we love to watch these very highly selected films, analyze them, discuss them, and that's what makes the Washington, D.C. International Film Festival unique in many ways. And so here I go with so many questions, but starting off with, what a powerful film, what an important message, especially right now, today. But also, you know, filmmakers, I think more than any other, politicians, business people, make such an impression on people across the world you're able to, you know, reach. And so, you know, India is a very, very difficult country, Indian culture, as we call it, to understand, to analyze. And your film sort of touches on so many different levels. And we have a short time for you to explain to us, starting from, and I think just the very word Dalit, not many people understand it. So can we just take it on from there, and then we'll delve into many more very interesting points.
Thanks so much, Manjula. Very, very excited to bring the film and to have this conversation with you as a part of the festival in Washington, DC. I think one of the biggest challenges was to just contain the story that was in our hearts and minds on screen within a stipulated time of 90 minutes. And in that, we're explaining, not just explaining, but actually helping people, not helping, but creating an experience that is immersive and authentic.
Yes.
And in that, there are so many terms, and how do you contain millennia old, discrimination, structures of discrimination in that. So that was an ongoing struggle from day one. And the word Dalit is understood in India and the world in so many different ways. It's very deeply linked to the very cruel discrimination system in which human beings are segregated into hierarchies, and those who don't fit into that or are not accepted in that hierarchy are kept outside and called untouchables or Dalits. And in our own popular culture, representation of Dalit men and women, and especially women, has been either that of extreme victimization, or this heroic representation in which one person is going to save everybody and solve world's problems. And the people that we met were neither. They were made of a completely different metal, and that has been even the entry point for us into the story, just getting inspired by everyday women who we wanted to present as full-bodied, complex characters.
Not to go back too long in the history of India, but even if we were just to look at it from independence, what was the term used at that time? We do talk about caste, and I think it's more class. So today, your film is so contemporary, right? Is it caste? Is it class? Is it education? Is it identity, as you bring up in your film, especially women? I mean, I'm just so impressed. These women that you have picked up, and I don't know how much you prepared them for acting as such, but they come across so natural as people you're meeting somewhere and talking to them, and their development. So they're basically very intelligent women. Now, are they educated? They were trained and they picked up the training very well, and look where they went. So I'm really intrigued as to where your film is reflecting Indian women of that level. I mean, you can talk about Indian women from, where Prime Minister to down there, but just this class, I think this sect of women, where are they going? Where have they come from and today?
I think who they are and what they're doing is a paradigm shift to our understanding of what Dalit women can do, as Rintu said, in pop culture. And just like for brief context, so Khabar Lahariya started off as a social experiment in 2002, where an NGO came in and essentially decided to work with women, most of whom had not completed formal education, and asked them, what would your stories look like in print? If you were to start a newsletter, what would it be like? And essentially these women started collecting their own news, designing their own news, and distributing their own news. And this newsletter was a success, but as with most processes, after 6 months, the NGO was wrapping up the project.
You bring that very forcefully and very convincingly in the film, how they developed, how they evolved. So there is no, oh, can it be? Was it possible? So I must say story is very well told. Yes.
I think that's why they picked up. So we entered the storytelling or their timeline in 2015 reached out to them saying, we're really interested in making a film about you. And they were very curious because they had a bunch of short films, bunch of short documentaries made on them. They had been covered extensively. So their question was, why do you want to stay with us? And for us, what had piqued our interest was the fact that as privileged folks living in a city like Delhi, we had never heard of Khabar Lahariya. Mm-hmm. And what was really interesting was these were people who were really outliers to a system, who were telling stories or actually speaking truth to power, not only for themselves or their communities, but really reflecting the true values of what journalism or old school journalism was supposed to be, right? Constantly challenging the system. And that's how we entered the story, saying, this is what we've done. These are the kind of stories we like telling. Why don't you have a look at our films? And they agreed, and they invited us. Very early on in the film, there is a meeting where Meera is making a pitch to shift from print to digital. That was incidentally our first day of filming. Mm-hmm. And we knew this had to be a feature-length film. It was impossible to contain this as a short. And 2016 essentially is when they made this shift from print to digital. And we stayed with them, and what we witnessed was this sophisticated approach to journalism that they brought with them, and essentially this whole idea of what can the fourth estate do to breathe life into a democracy. For us, we were living in a time where the mainstream media has essentially become a circus, not only in India, but I think in most parts of the world. So to have women who have always been kept out of the conversation, who have historically been denied their most fundamental rights, actually standing up and shining a light on the truth, for us was really intriguing, and that was the entry point for the story. And of course, then everything really blew up.
Yeah. While watching the film, and there have been so many films about the empowerment of women, Indian women, basically intelligent women who trained very quickly, but it's that innate curiosity. I think it's very female, and their a very high sense of ethics, of democracy. I love the way they keep, some of them kept saying, what's the word they use for freedom? Don't they keep saying, we want our freedom? But really, they're looking for independence, right? Their independence financially, independence of thought. I love the way the curve works, that they are looking for an avenue to express what they think and feel. And this Khabar Lahariya gave it to them. And I don't think they were even aware how far their message was going. But that's what they keep saying, social media. And it was fascinating how they did use, without, I think, quite being aware of the global impact it could have. Are they? I mean, have you shared it with them? The possibilities, the probabilities of where not only your film, but what their work, the impact. What impact has it made, say, in rural, where they are, in UP? And I loved your little, their escapade to Kashmir. I said, I won't get there for a while, but let me at least see it on your screen. So how was that for them to really even see different part of their own country?
The fun part about every woman at Khabar Lahariya is that they're very aware of who they are and what they represent, and what people feel when they see a Dalit woman with a camera asking questions, and mostly questions that are uncomfortable, but do it in the most professional and non-aggressive way. And that has been their training for all these years. And they're very aware of that. When they walk into a village, the way the entire village is reading them. Men are reading them differently. Women are reading them differently. Young girls are reading them differently, and they carry that responsibility with a acute sense of awareness. And even in the beginning, like when we were interacting in figuring out how to do this film. We were very open and honest about our global ambitions with the film, because we felt like this is a film that has a very deep global resonance, even though it's a very local story located in a very particular region in the country. But the way it's talking about different themes, there is deep resonance with what is happening in the world. And in the past 5 years, it's been such a joy to see them creating, fostering, nurturing collaborations, not just with the organizations in India, but also globally. The film has put a very strong spotlight on their work, but they were very deep in these collaborations even before the film actually came out. And they're really like amazing with the strategy and how they want to put their news out there. Mm-hmm. And Kashmir was such a gift to see unbridled joy and just women being women and having
they
fun.
Probably saw snow for the first time, right?
Many of them.
Yes. And it's a part of Khabar Lahariya's policy to do these retreats, to go to Goa and see the ocean and do a little, holiday and restructuring of thoughts. So I think as an organization that speaks volumes about who they want to be is really deeply embedded in their everyday work.
You just mentioned, and I read about, the film took 5 years in the making, and one could even tell from the confidence the women gained as film progresses. Has it really helped the position financially? Yes, economically. I can tell that they're much more confident in voicing their opinions. What about the male-female dynamics over there? While they were trying to kind of find their wings or find their expressions, was there a conflict?
I mean, just anecdotally going back, when we started filming with them and when they were gingerly moving with these phone cameras in the first year into these public spaces, most of the male journalists who were colleagues in the industry were very dismissive about what they were going to undertake, because most of the men over there had no context to what social media is, and they were still old school sort of pen and paper folks. And the last time we went, there was this voluminous change in attitude from their colleagues, where male journalists were walking up to them and saying, I have this breaking story and maybe we should share notes and compare with each other. And I saw your last video and it did so well. So, there is this muted respect within the industry for the work that they're doing. And I think what makes the work of Khabar Lahariya so special is that despite the obvious obstacles that they have, social, political, economic, they have found silent allies within the system. So there are many people within the administration who support the work of the journalists. And the journalists have found ways to put this out there in the public domain, that this is somebody who knows us and who supports our work. And so, there is this invisible layer of protection that has been built around the work that Khabar Lahariya is doing on the ground, because they're working in very hostile spaces more often than not. And I think
hostile in what sense?
Hostile in an obvious way, for one, being, working in regions that are known for high rates and incidents of violence against the Dalit community. Of course, that's a belt in India which more often than not reports the highest cases of violence against women, kidnappings, rapes, and murder. And then, of course, the silent layer of hostility that you receive when you're a Dalit woman. Things like when you're living in a village, there is this invisible boundary that you cannot cross, right? As someone who is Dalit. And the very fact that these women are not only stepping out of their homes, but stepping out of their homes as professional journalists has really changed palpably the way not only they are seen as women, but I think the perception of what a woman can do and achieve has, and we've seen these conversations play out in their own homes as well. Their hopes and their hopes for their daughters, their hopes for their sons, the way their sons and the brothers and the husbands view what a woman can and cannot do. These are conversations that have evolved. And I think the very fact that Khabar Lahariya exists is a stick in the system. They're not meant to. And the fact that they do and they're thriving is a very strong political statement, especially in India, that, it's a Dalit news outlet, which is flourishing. They've crossed 160 million views on YouTube, which is a testimony to their success.
The very, what you just explained, and I was going to say the progress, that's progress. Through whether we call it the film media or through the work of those women. What also impressed me so much was you're dealing with these very difficult, complex, intense issues, but there is a calm in your film. There isn't any turbulence. And the color palette is so natural. So it wasn't like you were imposing. Was it consciously, or did it happen? How much of it, I mean, you go into these rural areas in India. Did you just take it as it is, or were you kind of playing your camera? I was wondering as I was watching the film.
It was very important for us that the camera is an extension of the way we perceive this space, which is not our own, this reality, which is not our own. And it is such an intersectional story. There's caste and class and gender and everything is constantly going at each other, and yet it's different. I wouldn't necessarily conflate caste and class here, because here are women who have looked at each of this independent of each other, and also deeply understand what happens when there is a confluence of one over the other. And very early on, we realized that we couldn't have a full crew the way we had imagined. We couldn't work with the equipment that we had imagined, because it was so hot, and we needed to just blend in. So it was just three of us, Sushmit, me, and Karan, our co-cinematographer.
Really? The three of you? And you had all these long shots. It's quite
everything is just the three of us, and we had equipment that could fit in a backpack, and traveling in buses and rickshaws and walking several kilometers in a day with our journalists. There was no other way to actually tell this story than to be honest and as intimate as possible to its natural surroundings. So if we had to take a long shot, men like three of us would like run off to like a kilometer and tell Sunita, okay, now walk. And even while grading the film, we worked with a brilliant colorist, Sid Meera, who actually showed us like 3-4 looks, and we all sort of naturally gravitated to let's stick to the natural colors, to what it looks like. And that, I feel, contributes to the intimacy of the story a lot.
Yeah.
I think when we had the first sort of draft of the film and we showed it around to a few folks, one of the things that was a constant refrain was that their work is so dangerous, but how do we sort of feel the danger? And that became like, when we went back to the story on the edit, was how do we create a sense of tension throughout in the visual language of the film?
Sorry, Sushmit, I didn't understand what you meant by dangerous. What does it danger mean?
So, for instance, the very fact that Sunita steps out of her house and she lives in a mining belt, and, it's a region where you can easily be sort of like picked up for what you're doing, and you're reporting against the very systems that you've actually been a part of. So how do you set that up?
Yes, very risky for the women too. Mm-hmm.
I think the underlying sort of like theme that we used in the edit was, how do you show and not tell? Because it's one thing for a journalist to say this is a very difficult region to be in, and I've been threatened so many times, but and that sort of became a constant debate. And of course, it's so easy to also show the spectacle of violence to create like tension. But we were like, can we not? Let's choose not to show a single instance of violence in the film, and yet, create the atmosphere.
You kind of leave it that it could be, and yet not showing it, because that's where a lot of Indian cinema tends to go violence for no reason, whereas you can just leave it to, it could lead to, and then you do stick to the important factors, of the film. Now here's, we're showing it at this DC International Film Festival. 80%, are non-Indians. And even the Indians who, some of us who've never really been to those rural areas that you have taken us to, are going to discuss the film at many levels. And so and they'll say, oh, India. So when you put it in a larger context of India and what are the realities, I like the way you concentratedly stayed with these three women and on specific topics, right? But it leads to, for us, Indians, non-Indians, trying to understand the condition today. Not only with these women, but generally. I know towards the end, and I personally, especially, keep thinking, we all read in the West and what's coming out of India about free expression, about journalism in India and what journalists are going through. Now, in these three women, perhaps they were not, with a huge trumpet all over the country, so that maybe they were not noticed by the central government and all of that. But so what is the future for such kind of, whether you call it free journalism or social media? What is the freedom, even in social media?
That's an interesting question. I think over the course of the last, say, decade, especially the last 5 years, as we've seen the rise of the right, and a lot of it has been fueled by big data. So, it's not just India, it's the US, which witnessed 4 years, and who would have thought, like really, who would have thought? And I think that's, and that is why, especially North American audiences have responded so viscerally to the film, especially because they felt it. And I wonder if they would have reacted like this if this film had come out 4 years or 5 years ago. I'm curious, but I think that the only way forward, as I see it, as a filmmaker, as a citizen of this country, is for journalists and citizens and women like Meera to continue doing what they're doing, because there is a power, and there is, or let me put it another way, Meera's shining a light on another world, she's articulating a vision of a very bold and a different future. Mm-hmm. And it is people like Meera, whether they be journalists or teachers or historians or cartoonists, who need to be given more space to be able to do the work that they're doing. And I think that that's the hope in this country, that all is not lost. There are so many people who are really shining a light on the good. And, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. But I think through ages, certainly through the years, women have been struggling, have been expressing through various, but they haven't been given a spotlight. You see, so it does take either of today film, because it's the most influential, medium to make a statement or to promote anything. So what do you think, and you both have done so well with this film, is the responsibility, let's say, of a filmmaker for authenticity, for purity, for accuracy? And especially, India being, the most films coming out of India, how many are relevant? How many are doing important, meaningful, something that can or does make a difference? Not only to the country, but even I keep thinking, we are living all over the world. What is it today? I'll be honest, with everything that we're hearing about in the because of COVID, etc. There are times you feel, really, is this what's happening in India? Is this my India? So I'm asking you as filmmakers about the responsibilities that you carry, and you've done so well in this film.
I love that question. I think this film, apart from everything else that pushed us to make it, primarily was a response to our own response to the times that we were living in the past 5 years.
Yes.
And constantly raging within our families and friend circles and in our places of work, and really thinking, where does that rage take us? Can I create something constructive out of this moment? How do I respond to it in an articulate way? And mostly, I personally have lost a lot of friends in the past 5 years where we discuss what's going on. And a lot of people I held dear to my heart are not on the same page. We're not looking at the same human values as of dignity of everyone and so on. And I feel like both of us become our most articulate selves when we are behind that camera. And we are spotlighting someone who has looked at the same reality but seen a different future from it. And we want to amplify that. And that is the good that we put our work, our commitment, our years behind, and only hope that by the end of it, we are able to create something that speaks to everybody. And 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we can look back at this time. Hopefully things would have changed and say, did I create something of meaning and value? And I hope, I know that I have, honestly.
You can say that right now. We made a difference. I also just love the sensitivity. Sometimes, especially in a subject that you're dealing with, you can become overstated, or you can be understated or overly emotional also. It's easy to go that way. But I just love the equilibrium, let's say, of the film. But the sensitivity. And when you say that, yes, you must feel good about the film and making a difference. I'm just curious about this team, who does what, and who, as you said, just 3 camera people, director, writer, everything. Yes, so it just works well between the two of you. Yes.
It's a mystery of magic, I would say.
I love that.
We've known each other for 15 years now. We did a film school. We went to same film school.
Was this at Pune?
No, this is the Jamia Millia Institute.
Okay, right down in my city, Jamia Millia.
Yes. Okay. Mass Communication Research Center. So we've known each other forever as friends, and there's a very natural understanding of what we want, how we read a situation. And Sushmit's like the big picture person, and I love getting into the smaller details. And that's how I think there's a beautiful synergy there. We have our good days, we have our terrible days, but as a team, I think we work.
Yeah, and the fact that we are married doesn't make it easy, but that is the fun ride of it all. I don't think we would have chosen it any other way.
Yes, wonderful. Now you end the film with just a little hint about the political and where journalism, so many, and then the phrase mirror of society. So again, I think I'm coming to a similar question: how much generally filmmaking, and especially your film, and then what is the result? What is the impact when you make something, when you show society, oh, look how bad we are, how good we are, this is where we need to change, this is what we need to do. So I just love the ending as well, Meera. It makes you think on. It's not like something's finished, completed. Mm-hmm. It's like we need to continue our work. So do you see it that way? What's next for you? Are you working on anything right now?
We were supposed to hit the ground running with, another feature that we were developing the pandemic, of course, in India has shown up full force. So there are 2 projects in development. We're hoping that maybe optimistically next year we can begin work on them. But I think right now what we're sort of taking solace in is the fact that, Writing with Fire is traveling to so many festivals, and we're able to sort of engage with audiences virtually and have these conversations, which is so important. And in some of them, we've been bringing Meera, Sunita, and Shamkali when they're able to spare time from their schedules to participate. And it's just been wonderful to also see people who have been intrinsic to the making of the film, your protagonists, deeply engage with the story in such a meaningful manner where, they themselves, they were the first folks we showed the film to before it premiered at Sundance 1 week before. And we were very nervous about how they would react to it. And as the film ended, their response just sealed the deal for us because, they're very, very intelligent women. And they would call a spade, call you out. And just to have them respond to the film the way they did, we knew that we had a winner on our hands. Our hope is that we'll be able to use this year to amplify their story by having more audiences across the world watch this film and hopefully bring the film back to India later in the year or early next year and see how Indian audiences engage with this story.
Yeah, that was my kind of next question. Congratulations on the awards from Sundance. And I'm sure there'll be many more coming your way. So you've started with the festival circuit with this film, is that right? And it hasn't been shown anywhere in India right now?
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
The major festivals in India towards the end of this year. So we are hoping that, come October.
When they start actually doing in-person screening towards the end of the year. Yeah.
My sense is it will still be virtual, given how things are shaping up over there. Yeah.
But so this was, again, a curiosity with me that Indian audiences haven't seen it. How do you, Indian, made the film in India, how do you analyze its huge success with the Western viewers? How do they see it? I'll be talking to my colleagues here, and I know it's this huge curiosity and now interest about India. And yes, women's empowerment. And as we keep saying, these women that you selected, fearless, intelligent, daring women. But I think Indian women are as such. And so what makes the Western mind analyze it, read it differently?
I think this will have to be the last question or the last answer of the last word you'd like to say, because unfortunately, and we could go on for a long time, we're really out of time now. And so Sushmit and
Linda might add to that after Rintu and Sushmit give us their answers.
I think it's a mystery. We haven't decoded that yet. and because we've done everything virtual, we haven't really interacted with audiences, sit down and, really understand why it's worked. But I think universally a story of people who are relatable, people who are everyday women, and they have their wit and their bosses, and they run an organization. They are so hands-on. Their mothers, their friends. The everydayness of it makes them special, and yet not so special that you're like, oh my God, is this the only person like this in the whole world? And that's my reading. But this is a great time to actually segue to Linda and drag her into the conversation and ask her what worked for you.
For us, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. Anything else, Sushmit or Rintu, before we say goodbye quickly?
No, we're very excited that the film is playing to an audience in Washington, and we know that this is going to be a very, very discerning audience. So we're very curious to see how they respond and react to the film, and we'd love to hear from you. Please feel free to reach out to us as audiences across the world have. We feel elated when we hear from you.
Yes.
Thank you, Manjula. Thank you, Rintu. Thank you, Sushmit.
I wish we had met in person, but this is good. Thank you, Linda, for bringing the film. Thank you, and wish you all the best, Rintu and Sushmita.
Thank you, Manjula.
Thank you so much.